Okay, good morning everybody. Welcome to lesson 2. Today we're going to have a look at a kind of a grammar subject, but it's not really a grammar subject. It's more of a use of language. And most of grade 10 and 11, as you know, doesn't really cover grammar. Mostly, even in the book, it says grammar review. It's normally something that we've covered before. Now in this review, it's language for comparing, contrast and defining. Now all it is a small box on page 221. It doesn't really go into any detail, but I think it's something worth covering because it's something you're going to use every day. It's something that we use every day. So I think we're going to look at it briefly from the book, then I'm going to expand on it and I'll show you how to use it successfully, or at least less unsuccessfully. And I'll show you why we use it. So if you look at page 221, those of you that have it, if not, I have left a copy of the picture in Google Classroom and it's up on the screen now. So 221, quick revision, language for comparing, contrasting and defining. In reports, words and phrases are used to define or classify the topic. The first type, called a thelma, is said to be small. And that's a quote. And that's from the Bigfoot, the Yeti. The first type, called a thelma, is said to be small. Words and phrases are also used to compare or contrast different aspects of the topic. Some of these are also classified as connectors, but they can also be phrases like similar to, or as compared to, or different from. As far as Sherpas are concerned, the Yeti is just part of the local wildlife. In places, the vegetation is so thick that it is almost impossible to get through. Now, which aspects are being covered from the two sentences above? And that's it. That's all the details we've got. Now, we can't go on and do the activity book exercises because I don't have an activity book at home. So instead, I've got something else for you. But first of all, let's expand on what they're talking about. Now, why do we use comparisons? Why do we use contrast and comparison when we're defining a topic? Because it doesn't really make a lot of sense. If I wanted to describe something to you accurately, I would best go over the subject and explain every single detail to you. But that's not how we work, because that's not how human beings work. Now, we have many senses, but our primary sense is eyesight, which means that most of us think predominantly visually. We think in terms of seeing something. We think in terms of having something in front of us that we can see and relate to. And when we imagine, we don't imagine sounds, we don't usually imagine in abstractions, we usually imagine colours and pictures. We usually imagine things being painted into our minds. We usually read a book and we can live the experiences as if it was a memory. It's been proven that when deaf people dream, they dream in sounds. They don't dream, if they were, blind. If they were born blind, they don't dream in pictures at all because they've got no concept of them. Our brain cooks our reality and feeds it back to us. So why do we use comparison then? Because when most of us think, we think in terms of what we already know. So that's why when we describe something, we always start by saying, it was like this, but. And that's how we compare things, and that's why we compare things. And normally, if you heard a weird sound at night, and this is something we get a lot of in UFO circles, they say, well, it was like this, and it sounded like a cross between this and this. Because what they're doing is, by comparing it, they're bringing you a reality anchor. They're anchoring you to their reality. They're giving you something that we all know, and we can all share experience of. So what we're doing is we're saying it sounded very, very strange, kind of like, for instance, a helicopter and a horse being thrown into a meat grinder. Okay, so you may not be able to imagine what a UFO sounds like because you've never heard one. It's something that's completely out there, and most of us will never see one in our lifetimes. Maybe. But you've all heard a helicopter. So a UFO enthusiast will say at first, well, it sounds like this. So we say it sounded like a helicopter. So you've got a reference. Now they can anchor you to their story. Straight away you're thinking of the sound of a helicopter. You're thinking of the blades chopping through the air, making that whoosh whoosh sound as they go through the air, and the drone of the turbine engines. So straight away you've got that impression in your mind. Then we say it also sounded more like a horse being thrown into a meat grinder. So you can imagine the wheels of a metal meat grinder, the horse screaming over the top of it. And you've got this noise of a helicopter making this screaming sound. So that's why we use comparisons, because we want to start by getting something that we can all agree on and that we can all share in the imagination of. So we have to go back to something that we all recognize. So when we do a comparison, we're not really comparing it to something for the reasons of explaining, is it really bigger or smaller? We're really doing it so that we can create a frame of reference that we can all share. So when we do a comparison with something, we're really taking something that everybody else knows and we're changing that into the thing that we're trying to describe. So if I was going to talk about my phone, for instance, so we start off, because that's right here, we start off, my phone is exactly like an iPhone, only it's totally different. In what way is it totally different? Then I have to explain by comparing it to an iPhone. First of all, we need specifics. It's exactly the same as an iPhone 12, except 1/10 of the price, and the camera's not that good, and sometimes it doesn't work very well, and I don't think there's all that much more differences. I don't think my phone can't do anything that an iPhone 12 can do. It just doesn't do it as well. But that's fair enough. This thing's about 2.5 years old already, so fair play. So we start off with a frame of reference that everybody knows about, and then we start changing it into the thing we're describing. That's how we make a comparison. So if we were talking about the Yeti, that's why we say, if you look back at the documents, it said it's about 2 foot taller than a man, or it looks like a gorilla, except it stands up straight. So we start with something that we know, and then we change the details until we get very close to being able to imagine what the thing looks like. So when we've got no frame of reference, we have to use something to generate a frame of reference. So when we talk about these weird ideas like aliens or UFOs or Yetis, we usually would start by saying it looked like this. And using that is a very common tool in the use of English and the English language. It's like this, only it's different. Now, it may seem like a ridiculous thing to say, and it is. When you actually look at it scientifically and objectively, saying it's like this, only different, makes you look like an idiot. But it's the way we think. An alien, for instance, looking at us, the way we speak, would think, what is wrong with these creatures? But we understand that because we know that we think visually, and it helps us to have a frame of reference that we can anchor our imagination to. That's why we use comparisons, and that's why we compare things. That's how we do it. It's because we know that that's how our brain works. Okay? So that's why we do it. We use that to define the thing that we're talking about. So when we're explaining what something is, and you see this a lot, I watch a lot of bike reviews, for instance, motorcycle reviews. And in every case, they do the same trick. They say, well, it's a lot like the one that came before, except, because it gives us a frame of reference. There's a new Honda Rebel 500 out. The old it wasn't a 500 Rebel, it was a 250. So they start by saying it's like the old one, only it's got more power, it uses less petrol, it's got bigger wheels. So they start by telling us something that we already know. Because I'm already watching this one, I'm familiar with the old bike, then they tell me how the new one's changed. So we define what the new characteristics are by starting with a frame of reference and then building upon it. And that's pretty much all there is to it. Once you know how that works and why we do it, then it makes sense. Now we're going to watch a short video about using language to compare and contrast. And then there's a small quiz, again, 10 questions, very simple, and we'll quickly go through the answers at the end. So watch this. Oh, well, you've already done that. Watch the short video. I didn't make it because I'm not going to get time to make these at the moment, unfortunately. So watch the video about using language to compare and contrast, and then do the quiz. All right? Thanks for listening.